Welcome to DigitalK.
Chaos Group. Why would you call a company Chaos Group?
Because we control chaos.
What do you mean? But I mean, it's a wacky name for a serious company. You've produced computer graphics software for Hollywood. It's the most successful 3D rendering solution for media. The most successful.
I believe so. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit. Tell us the story. You know, how did it start? What was the journey?
Well, as surprising as it may seem, we started two of us. We weren't in a garage, but we were in my parents' apartment. Mm-hmm. And we were excited by computer graphics. And we started building the software once we realized there's huge potential in the market, because initially Chaos Group was actually founded with the idea of producing commercials and advertisements. And we were really into computer graphics and the marketing stuff. But we started in '97, which was not the best year to start. So about '98, we had to fold. And we realized that me personally being a computer developer, instead of using the software, I decided to write the software. Because as a user, I realized there's huge gaps in the technology that was provided by the larger companies. And I was excited by computer graphics, and I was in the university back then, first year, and that's where I met my partner, my business partner, even as of today, Vlado, and we started building the software. It took me a little bit of time to convince him, because he was all about studying and not working, so it took me a little bit of convincing. But yeah, and the rest is history. So we were looking at the gaps in the industry, and we were providing better solutions than most of the others.
So you kind of scratched your own itch, as it were. You saw a need and thought, let's build our own software to do this.
Actually, we started with a smaller piece of software, and we realized there's even bigger gaps. And we started experimenting with the rendering part of computer graphics, and we realized that we were building something that's really unique. And we actually gave it out for free initially, and we asked the industry, do you like this product? And everybody said, this is the fastest and the coolest thing we've seen so far, even comparing to the commercial products. And that's how we decided to actually turn it into a product.
It's pretty amazing to think, actually, that we're sitting here with somebody who's created software which ultimately has helped an amazing series like Game of Thrones be developed. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? Really fantastic. You know, it's round of applause.
Feels great.
You must be very proud. I mean, what was the journey from going? Obviously, you're starting a company, you're scaling up, you're creating software which now is used globally, but there's always a journey from the beginning, isn't it? How did you start to go, hold on a second, we're going to have to kind of get offices in Los Angeles, we're going to have to scale this up. I mean, what did you do to kind of get to that point? Well, and then where did you go? Mm-hmm.
Well, it's really interesting, because we are in a way different from the rest of kind of the software companies in the way that our technology can only be used on a global level. We were never focused on Bulgaria, we were never focused on a specific region, and when we were starting, internet was already strong enough and good enough for us to actually be able to provide our solution globally. Because when we talk about computer graphics, Bulgaria is not exactly the first place you're thinking of. It's more like Hollywood, it's more like the car manufacturers, it's more like architectural and product design studios. So from the very first moment, we had to think globally, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to provide the right solution to the right people. And the market in Bulgaria is really, really small and tiny compared to the world. And somehow we just started thinking globally from the very beginning. Opening offices was, as we love to say it, we were one of the very few companies probably that invested in the US, and we acquired an American company, which is kind of unique. And we were joking that people are outsourcing development into Bulgaria. We were outsourcing development into the United States, which was kind of unique in a way. So yes, and there were these guys who were really developing they were licensing our technology, and they were developing different products. And then we realized that it doesn't make any sense to license our technology. It's something that we have to take under our own ownership. And we acquired the company, and we kept the team, and that's how we actually came about to have an office in the United States.
So a Bulgarian company acquires a Los Angeles company. That must have been interesting. So the next phase, then. I mean, you know, have you seen it become a much more competitive environment? Let's face it, the Hollywood scene is the most competitive industry in the world, really, if you think about it. How have you fended off competition with your platform?
Well, it's been a difficult process. We've had to deal with a lot of incompetences from our side because we were a bunch of kids pretty much out of a university, and all of a sudden we had to take on large German and American companies, and it was really difficult. But what made it possible was the fact that we were building a very strong product. And regardless of all the marketing and sales activities of everyone, if you have the right product for the right audience, the audience is going to acknowledge it. So even though on the business and the sales sides we were not very strong, especially in the beginning, we were really focused a lot on the users, and the users actually made this dream come true, and they helped us. And when you give all your heart and attention to the users, they will find a way to give it back to you. And that really helped us a lot. And a lot of these success stories with the large studios, they're really based pretty much on friendship by now, because when you work day and night with someone helping him out, you're stuck to build a friendship. You know,
Yeah.
there's no way around it, because calling at 4 in the morning, you know, there's no business that can actually take on that. It's got to be a friendship. It's got to be something a lot bigger than just business.
You've got to pick up the phone at 4 o'clock in the morning and say, yes, I can render images of dragons.
Yes.
It's going to happen. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Go back to sleep.
Yeah.
We'll have it ready for you. You were the first Bulgarian entrepreneur to be selected into Endeavour's global network in October 2015, the first, actually. So it's quite an achievement. You must have seen so much change since, you know, the late 90s when you started and up until today.
Definitely.
What are some of the things that stick out for you?
Well, not surprisingly, in Bulgaria, the business culture was not at all in good shape in the 90s. Because as we Bulgarians know, a lot of what's going on in Bulgaria is related to politics, and a lot of it has to do with kind of deals under the table, as we call it. And a lot of us really don't believe that there's a way to actually make it work properly, where you actually start with an idea and you actually bring real value to the world. And I think that kind of perception has really changed in the last 20 years. Because in the 90s, unless you were really related to someone who is big in the politics, there was pretty much no way, there was zero chance for you to become a successful business. And nowadays, all we talk about are startups, fundraising, and all of that. So the culture has really shifted and changed a lot. A lot more people believe that it's possible to build something valuable on a global scale and put it in the hands of VCs or someone else and scale it up. And that's kind of that's a huge change, because it requires something very important. It's people have started actually dreaming about being successful in a different way, and I think that culture really changed a lot.
We just saw a fascinating and detailed presentation about Central and Eastern Europe's ecosystem, but also Bulgaria as well. Did some of that stuff chime with what you see is happening on the ground?
I believe so. I see it all around us. In our case, we are still privately owned. We never took any investments, but in general, I see a lot of the larger companies doing spin-offs, and a lot of people kind of, when they work in larger companies and they get this culture of being an entrepreneur and building new stuff, they kind of want to take that to the next level, and they quit and they start their own companies and their own startups. So I see a lot of that lately.
You're privately owned at the moment. There's obviously always a question with companies like yours who are successful. You probably have very decent revenues. I'm pretty sure that's pretty much the case. That becomes very attractive to venture capital companies. It also becomes attractive to growth funding VCs. Do you have them knocking on your door a lot?
We do. However, at this moment, for us, it's important to really focus on our own dreams and our own vision. And part of that vision would probably will require at one point an external investment because we really want to scale some of our activities on a completely different level. So that may change in the future. And it really gets down to what we want to do, and we want to actually build more value and provide even better solutions to the market. That's pretty much where we are. And we'll probably have a lot more of these conversations in the future.
So you're not discounting the idea of external funding, but it sounds like you want to do something much bigger with a new product.
Well, yes, it's interesting with our own growth as human beings, our dreams became bigger. So if you would have asked me 20 years ago, what's your dream? Well, I was pretty much fascinated when we hired the first person. You know, it was, for me, it was a game changer. And all of a sudden, it's not 2 of us, it's 3 of us. And if you think about it in a different way, we just grew by 50%, you know, overnight.
It's quite some growth. Yeah.
So that's when I realized that it's no more an R&D experimentation thing that my partner and I were doing. All of a sudden, we are becoming responsible for giving out salaries on a regular basis. All of a sudden, we are dealing with employment agreements. All of a sudden, we need lawyers, we need finance guys, and that's when I realized, okay, something has really changed. But that was one of the really big changes for me, is when we started taking care of other people. And with our own growth, our dreams grew. And I think if back 20 years ago, I would have listened to myself, what I have to say now, would have said, I've gone crazy. So today we have much bigger dreams, and our vision is to really provide a much bigger global visualizing solution.
Would you, if you could talk to yourself, that self that started the company back then in the 90s, and talk to them, what would you say? What advice would you give them? What things to avoid? Perhaps what mistakes to avoid?
A lot. Well, that's how we grow and that's how we learn, right? By doing a lot of mistakes. But there's definitely a few things that I would have given, paid more attention to if I knew then.
Such as what?
Such as if people want to scale, if they have a big dream and vision, they should involve a lot more skilled and knowledgeable people in running businesses. And if you have a passion for a product or a service that delivers value, bear in mind that if you plan to scale, there's just stuff that you need to do by the book. And the sooner you get business people and operational people involved, the better for you, because I realized this a little bit too late, because I myself am a developer. I'm not a professional manager in any shape or form. But when I realized at one point that by the time I realized I need to change, we were over 100 people. And by the time we actually started doing changes, we were 200. And it's extremely difficult to change the culture and the way a company works when it's 200 people, trust me. It's pretty much impossible. So one of the biggest advices I would give to anyone is the sooner you start involving professional business managers into running the company, the better. And a lot of people actually think that because people who are running businesses, in many cases, they don't understand the product in details. They don't have to. It's okay. You have product people who understand the product, but in order to run the business, you just need really business people who have studied professional management and they know what they're doing in terms of running companies.
You didn't believe that you yourself could become more of that professional manager, or?
I could, but I was always more interested in technology and customer-facing stuff, where we go and talk about technology, we get excited. We just built, the last couple of years, we've done the biggest computer graphics event in the region, called Total Chaos, and it's been amazing, and this is the stuff that really excites me.